What Peter and I are going to go through today is the Reinvent recap from Reinvent 2023. Does everyone know what Reinvent is? Yes, seeing mostly nods. For those who don't know what Reinvent is, it's essentially a massive conference in Vegas, held in Vegas every year, last week of November. We get lots of customers in, we get lots of partners in, and that's where most of our big sort of announcements come. Last year was no different. I was lucky enough to be there. Heaps of announcements, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to go through them all today because we will be here for 2 or 3 more hours, and I'm sure you all want to have a few beers and go home. So we're going to go over some of the big highlights. What we'll start with is looking at Amazon Q, which was one of the headliner announcements in last year's Reinvent, and just how that's being integrated into AWS and our services. We'll then look at Zero ETL, another big sort of movement from AWS to try and make data engineers' lives easier. We'll then look at, Peter will then take you through a bit on data governance and data lakes, and then we'll cover some of the main services, analytics services, one by one. That will get a bit racy towards the end because there is, as I said, a lot of announcements. So let's start with Amazon Q. So Amazon Q is now available through multiple different services on AWS. It's a generative AI assistant. So of course, we all know what generative AI is. We've all hopefully been playing around with it. It was a big buzz of last year, and of course it's going to continue to be a big buzz of this year. Amazon Q is being brought into AWS in multiple different ways. One way is, so it's being used really to help you solve problems, answer questions. It's able to integrate with your data, which means it's able to provide you your own, information about your company and your data specifically, which is really powerful and really cool. And of course, as with anything AWS, security is really important. We want to make sure it's secure and private, so all of your data and your information, anything you ask Q, stays private. It's all yours. We don't use it for any other purposes. A few areas of expertise at Amazon Q. So as I mentioned, it can integrate with your data. So it has over 40 different connectors to different data sources, and that allows you to essentially train it or provide it with context to the prompts that you're asking, so that you can provide contextual information about your company and your business. It's also been trained and been given access to the last 17 years of AWS documentation, including sort of well-architected frameworks and things like that, which means that you can ask it questions about solution architecture, what's the best way of doing things, and it will be able to provide you accurate responses there. As we'll see in a second, it's been embedded into multiple different services. QuickSight is one of them, and some of the generative BI applications coming out of QuickSight are quite exciting. Amazon Connect allows us to do things like summarization of calls, and it can actually provide, so Connect is used for agents calls with their customers, so it can do things like provide the agent with updates or information that might help their consumer on their call in real time, which is really powerful. And coming soon, it's also going to be integrated into supply chain. So if anyone is using supply chain or looking to use it, that's also going to be very exciting. Specifically with analytics, one of the big announcements for Redshift and for Q was the ability to use generative SQL within Amazon Redshift. So given we're all data engineers, I'd say we'd probably mostly be aware of what Redshift is, but it's AWS's cloud data warehouse. Q is able to be used to provide you or generate SQL for your queries. So you provide it natural language, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And it's able to take your natural language, generate SQL based on your data model that's within Redshift. Now, as I mentioned, so here we have a demo on the left there, which might not be that easy to read. Essentially, we're asking it to do a specific task, and it's able to go and generate the SQL based on that task. It can get quite complex, which is great, and it's, as I said, all private, which means that your data model and your data is not leaking out. It's all held within your account. So QuickSight is AWS's BI tool, business intelligence tool, and Amazon Q is being brought into QuickSight in multiple different ways, which is very exciting. Over here on the right here, you can see a few different ways that you can use Q in preview in QuickSight at the moment. So one of them is to generate BI sort of charts and visualizations using natural language. And you can see here, so we've asked it for MLM free trials, and Q has been able to understand what MLM means month on month. It's also been able to understand what data it has access to and provide a chart that is reasonable for the question that you've asked. What it's also done down the bottom of that right-hand side is asked you, did you mean something else? So based on potentially other questions that you've asked or other charts that have been made in the past, maybe you meant something slightly different, and Q is able to provide that as an option as well. Another thing that makes sort of the analyst's life a bit easier is the ability to generate formulas and expressions based on free text as well. So it's often times we need to start Googling to figure out what the best function is and what the best expression is to do a certain thing, but now with Q you're able to ask it natural language and it can provide you the answer straight away, which is very powerful. So I'll now move on to zero ETL. Being data engineers, we know the importance of moving data from sources to targets, and we all know the pain of trying to do that in a scalable way and in a reliable way. Ultimately, no one wants to spend their time building these pipelines to get data from A to B, or at least I know I don't want to be doing that sort of stuff. And AWS has recognised that this isn't really where the value lies. The value lies in using that data when it's in its target to do important things, to drive insights, to create value. So we've really been moving towards, and that value can be for many different things. Here's a few examples of why you might want real-time or near real-time data in your analytics services. And really, we've been moving towards a zero ETL, what we're calling a zero ETL ecosystem for a while. So Redshift, of course, is, as I mentioned, the analytics data warehouse on AWS. And we're really positioning that as the main place for all of your analytics workloads. Or for a lot of your analytics workloads at least. But the key is the ability to get the data into Redshift. You may know from last year's Reinvent, or from the year before, 2022's Reinvent, we announced zero ETL of Aurora MySQL, which allowed you to set up a pipeline that you don't need to maintain infrastructure for. You just sort of have a source and you have a target, your source being Aurora MySQL, your target being Redshift, and any changes that happen on the source are automatically replicated over to your target in Redshift. In near real time, sort of sub-second near real time, that data is just moved across for you. Now, that is GA, is generally available for Aurora MySQL, and we've announced a preview for Aurora Postgres, Amazon DynamoDB, and for Amazon RDS for MySQL. So really powerful to enable you to start moving your data into your analytics tools quickly without having to manage these sort of pipelines. And as you can see, we've announced preview for Amazon RDS for MySQL, so you can imagine that we're sort of continuing to move down this route. I'll now pass to Peter, who will go through a bit on data governance.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. So when we talk about data governance, we basically talk about a modern data architecture. So when When I talk about the modern data architecture, usually you use something like this. So in the middle, you got your data lake. And the data lake is typically based on an S3 bucket. I assume everybody knows what an S3 bucket is. I hope so. With a few additional services like lake formation, which is typically what we talk about when we talk about governance, permissions, all that stuff. Patina, Glue, of course, for our technical data catalog. We kind of got ourselves a data lake, and then all the rest of it kind of hovers around it. Now, if you do that within an organization, and you've got that data lake centralized for the entire organization, you sometimes run into some issues. And the issues are that you've got a team that is responsible for that central data lake that hasn't produced that data. They don't know that data. Basically, they have no clue. They've been told to govern that data. Great. So you kind of segregate the data lake from the producers. And so more and more we see a bit of an evolution there. And that's where the idea of a data mesh comes in. And now, data mesh is built on the idea of a data lake, but it's kind of spreading the data lake across your organization. The idea is to keep the lake, let's say the actual data, closer to where it comes from. So you'll have producers, the index works, hey, there you go. Data producers, they're typically referred to as data stewards as well. They're the ones who know where data comes from, they've probably produced it, they know the data, they know the schema, all that stuff. So they're going to be in charge of preparing the data for our consumers. No, that's not working very well. Anyway, so for our consumers. In the middle, however, we still need governance. So your governance has to remain centralized because within, especially a larger organization, finding data is one of the biggest problems our customers see. They simply don't know what data is around. So you need to have some kind of catalog, centralized. We need to make sure that we know who has access to what data, who is publishing data, who is asking permission, what kind of SLA have we agreed upon, all that stuff. And with the classic data lake, to be honest, it's not even that simple to do. So what we've added here is what we call data zone. So data zone adds a few things. It first of all has that central governance for the entire organization, but it adds also what we call a business data catalog. And so Glue, again, hoping most people have at least heard of Glue. It does a lot of things, ETL as we were just talking about, but also our technical data catalog. But that doesn't give you metadata, like for example, what kind of data is this really? Yeah, we got the schema, great, but what is it meant for? What kind of SLA will be put on this data set? So that kind of stuff can be put in what we call a business data catalog, and that's what Data Zone is going to give us. So it's going to bring the producers, consumers together, allow producers to publish their data in a central place so that the consumers can find it, but then the consumers can also add more data to it. They can potentially give you some feedback on the data. They can ask you for certain preparations. And so it becomes that central, it's almost like a broker, really, now that I think about it. It's a bit like a broker between the producer and the consumer. Now, Data Zone, I have originally a few more slides. Data Zone has been in preview for a while, so it's been tested quite a bit, so it is now in general availability for GA. And so that was a big announcement. And it looks a lot different, because I did a few demos back in the day, and wow, it's changed a lot for the better. As you all love Gen AI, there's a bit of Gen AI in there as well, so setting up that business catalog isn't necessarily easy or fun. There's quite a lot of work to be done there, so we've added some Gen AI features as well, actually on different sites. One is for search and discovery. So as a consumer, for example, I'm looking for a certain data set. I don't know how to describe it properly, so I'll use some natural language. I'll say, okay, this is kind of data set I want, has to have this and this kind of data. And so the Gen AI component will start looking for, hopefully, data sets that respond to that. But it will also help us to write that actual business catalog. From a producer point of view, I need to understand how to describe that data as well. So that's as well what Gen AI will do in this case. Next one is S3 Express One Zone. So it's a new storage class. Quite exciting. We don't get new storage classes every day. It's actually a little bit more than just a storage class. So I assume everybody knows what S3 is. It's quite important quite important storage for our data lakes. Been used for I don't know how many different applications. The thing is, with all the work we've got a lot of our customers using it, but there's always something more. There's something, and the biggest problem that we saw was that, first of all, from a performance point of view, with the classic buckets, your performance actually grows with the size of your data. So, for example, when you put up your data in the data lake, you're hopefully using some prefix. I'm assuming you're not all putting it in one big list. As you're constructing more prefixes, your actual performance is going up. So the amount of requests per second that you can actually send to S3, that you get a response to, will increase with size. That's great if you have a lot of data, but what if my data set isn't necessarily huge? I just need a lot of interaction. And I want really, really fast response, very low latency. That's where we started thinking about a different kind of storage class. So what we're doing with this is accelerating performance for very latency sensitive applications. That's the first thing here. Scaling to millions of transactions per second, again, independent of the size, number of prefixes, all that stuff. For that reason, we've got a brand new bucket type, first time that I know of. And then we start managing multiple storage solutions, because yes, there are alternatives. You don't have to use S3. You don't have to. You know, you can put somewhere on EMR, you can put them in Redshift. Well, why do people like S3? Well, huge durability, 11 nines, and let's be honest, the cost is pretty good. It's kind of important for a lot of people. So why would we start using multiple storage solutions if we can still use S3, as long as we can solve those issues? And so we also see a reduction of TCO, total cost of ownership. How? Well, I'll be honest with you, the storage price for this new storage class is actually higher than the standard one. You probably saw that one coming. It was a snag. But because you have that very low latency, your very expensive resources, because we're talking about probably feeding your data to a machine learning model, like your training, for example, massive interactions. Yeah? You have to go. We've got all of GPUs and all of that very fancy resources waiting, all of compute resources that cost a lot of money, even though you're paying it for what you're using. But if it's waiting for that data to actually come, it is being wasted. And so here also we see a reduction in the total cost of ownership. And so that's what we got. Express one zone storage class. It's for, as you can see here, compute intensive workloads, single digit millisecond latency. It's for most frequently accessed data. You can almost see it like a cache, almost, or cache, sorry, my pronunciation is always wrong, for special use cases like machine learning training. That's why you don't necessarily need to load all your data in there. If it doesn't require that kind of latency, then keep it in a regular bucket. It has 10 times faster requests and 50% lower request cost compared to standard storage class, in case you're wondering. This is pulling it all together with the rest of them. Now, actually, in all fairness, this slide is a little bit misleading, because just putting it next to it, you might start thinking, oh, I'll put that in my lifecycle rules. And no. This is an actual different type of S3 buckets. So you can't move them around just like that. But we've added an import function for it. So we can easily import data from other S3 buckets into it. So yes, it's a different storage class. It's actually more a different bucket altogether. I'm being really honest here. So 3 elements in there. One, we do have that different type of bucket. It's called the directory buckets. So yeah, if you now go to S3, there's actually a change in the GUI where you have general purpose. You have 2 tabs now. Instead of just your list of buckets, you got a tab with general purpose buckets, all the buckets you ever used until now, and a new tab, which is probably empty at the moment, minus, with directory buckets. So they do not have any per prefix limits for the transaction per second. So it's built very different. It's a bit like a shared file system, but then in S3. So a bit of best of both worlds there. It says you optionally choose to co-locate all your compute stuff in the same zone. It is a one zone, in case you haven't noticed this. So it's very different from the others, most of the other storage classes that are indeed highly available over the 3 availability zones. This one is not. It's part of where the power comes from. For that reason, I wouldn't consider this optional. Please put your compute in the same availability zone. That will help reduce the latency as well. Kind of makes sense, but thought it was worth to ask. There's also change, without going into details, but in the authentication part, it's a session-based system now, so you have temporary tokens, which again speeds up those requests, so that we don't have to authenticate every single time that we're sending a request. We want millions per second, so we have to do something about that. All right, that's it. Back to the service-specific announcement.
Okay, now we'll go through some of the service-specific announcements. So that was some of the big headlines that we had for Reinvent last year. Now we'll go through service-specific, some of the major ones for each of them. At the end of each service, we have a page that has all of the announcements. As you'll see, there's quite a few. If you have any questions about a service in particular, or something, or an announcement in particular, feel free to ask us after this, either in Q&A or come up to us in person, and we'll be more than happy to help you out with them. I'll take Amazon Redshift first. So, just at a high level, Redshift is a cloud data warehouse. It's been around for now 12 years, I think. So it's gone through a lot of change over the last 12 years, and it continues to change, which is great. We had a few big announcements. Amazon Q was one of them, which I've already spoken about, and the announcement of Zero ETL preview for a few more sources. Another big announcement in preview now, we have the ability to have multiple writing clusters to a single data set. So previously, you can use data sharing with Redshift, and data sharing allows one cluster to own a data set and multiple other clusters to then read from that in place without having to move data around. Now you can have multiple clusters writing to the same data set as well. So that's really powerful for multiple different applications. One of them is potentially you have multiple small batches that happen throughout a day or throughout a week, and then once a day or once a week you have a massive load that you need to do that needs a lot more compute. Well, now instead of having to scale a single cluster up and down to get the best sort of price performance, you can use multiple different clusters. You can use a smaller cluster to do the ETL process of the smaller batch, and then have a larger ETL cluster to do the larger amount. Similarly, it's becoming more and more often in a data mesh world that our customers will have multiple clusters for different areas of the business. And a big ask is how can we have them all sort of having their own cluster, doing their own thing, but also being able to write to the same place as well. So that's now available through multi-writer clusters, multi-writer data sharing. This is in preview at the moment, which means that you can go and test it out yourself. Iceberg is becoming more and more common. It's had a massive surge of popularity over the last sort of 12 or 24 months, and becoming more and more of the norm. Now in general availability, you're able to use Iceberg, or read Iceberg through Redshift Spectrum straight from S3. So you have Iceberg tables maintained on S3, they're now able to be read in Redshift through ELT processes. Another big announcement on the generative AI side, Redshift now in preview again. Redshift ML allows you to bring your own large language models to Redshift. This can be really useful for doing things like summarization of data that you've got sitting within Redshift. So if you've got things like call logs or something like that, you can start using Redshift ML and a large language model to do summarization. Really useful for things like categorization as well. If you want to start categorizing all of your data into certain buckets. So there's many different reasons you might want to do it, but it's really exciting to see that Redshift's leaning into the Gen AI space as well. Here's, as I said, a big list of things that Redshift has announced as well. I won't go through all of them, but we're continuing to make enhancements within Redshift to make it better and more user-friendly for everyone. Here's the second page. So, as I said, there was a lot. I'm going to pass back over to Peter, who'll go through the rest of the services now as well.
Thank you. That was pretty fast. And we'll keep going now. There's a lot of these lists, so I'll pick a few of them. So next one is QuickSight We already got an introduction to that one. Let's have a quick look here. There's been actually quite a redesign. For those who have used QuickSight in the past, I have. I'm very happy with the redesign. So there's also a brand new service, basically cost and usage dashboard. So for those who are very much in tune with their cost spendings, which hopefully we all are, this is a pretty good way to keep track of that. It's actually based on QuickSight. A bit of a side service there. What else do we have? There's a whole bunch of things on assets as well. So we can bundle assets now with permissions and tags and basically download the whole thing. You can export them as a bundle, which is really good. Like you just create a new dashboard, visual, whatever, and a shared folder. And what you can do with this one actually is have an automatic event sent to the event bridge, which will then make sure that you call a new API which exists to bundle all of that together with your permissions, chuck it over into some storage. So if something happens, you can easily restore it. The more automated, the better, of course. You can personalize your embeddings. If you have used QuickSight, one of the cool features about it is that there's an embedding SDK, so you can actually embed your dashboards and all your stuff, your visuals, into other applications. Software service applications, for example. You can now personalize them. Cute, isn't it? What else do we have? We customize a whole bunch of things. Oh, we have connectivity now to BigQuery, Google's Redshift. So, which is cool. What else do we have? Yeah, a whole bunch of things now where you can map your IAM roles to the roles of QuickSight, and you can also change the kind of access that they have. So, flexibility is really the key here. Bit of restricted folders, and believe it or not, I wanted to really talk about this one. All the purchase of Spice, in case you think we're doing the nasty stuff here. Spice is just the engine behind QuickSight, so you don't have to manually set up the capacity anymore. So Glue, super critical service, and does basically everything. Like with Vandaele, there's no data pipelines. It does the data catalog, the technical one, not the business one. It does the ETL stuff, which Visual Studio has data brew for data preparation, and on and on and on. Obviously, things change there. A really cool one there is the data quality one. It's been introduced a while back, which in itself was already a huge improvement. Now, you have a lot of rules that you can set up, which is great if you actually know what is going to happen. But there are anomalies, there are things that just happen. So, there you go again, GenAI is in there to help us find anomalies and to create some dynamic rules based on it. Really cool feature. Multi-engine apps, okay. This one is a good one, generating column level statistics. So as part of the profiling job, so while you're profiling your data, a lot of metadata and a lot of statistics get collected. It get linked now in Glue with the columns on the column level. Now that in itself is cool, but boring. You can then use that with Athena or Redshift to optimize your queries. And so you got Redshift has a really good optimizer, so you can use these statistics as well. For example, if you have a minimum maximum of the information for each of the files, you know which files to read. It will give you your answer faster, better performance, but of course also save you money. A whole bunch of new databases there, I forgot the names. And we have also native connectivity to Open Search as well. Oh, and this one is a good one. So Glue Studio is a visual tool, hopefully you know it, to set up ETL pipelines. You're still using ETL after all the zero ETL we have. And now also has an interactive data preview. So while you're building up that data pipeline, you can actually see for all your sources and even for the transform nodes, what does it look like? Like once I execute this, what is this going to look like on a sample? Then EMR, our big data platform. And so this is where if you want to work with Spark and all that's a Hive, that's what we have. It stands for Elastic Map Reduce. It's basically a managed to-do cluster for those who don't know this one. It's our big data platform. We now have Code Whisperer integrated, awesome stuff. Does everybody know Code Whisperer? Nope. Code Whisperer is our GenAI tool that helps you build code, basically. So when you activate it into your IDE, It will help you make suggestions. You give it some prompts in the comments. And say, oh, build me a function that does this. And then it starts cycling through some code and say, well, what about that? No, that's not all. Next. Okay, that's what on. And then bit by bit, it can help you build it up. It can actually build up a whole function or help you go step by step to it. And it does security analytics analysis for you as well. So really good, great to have it in EMR Studio as well. We also have Athena in there somewhere. Yeah, there we go. So there's an interactive query editor now in Studio as well, and EMR is now working with the new Express One Zone as well. It's been working with S3 forever, with EMR file system, but now also works with that. This is a good one as well. So we've got a really cool data wrangler in SageMaker. Now, it's really important for your data preparation. You want to prepare your data for training machine learning. And we all know the saying, rubbish in and rubbish out. If you want to have a good result with your machine learning model, you have to prepare your data. This is a very critical step in our pipeline. It's also a very tedious step. It is a lot of work. Data wranglers can help us prepare that a lot faster. SageMaker has a good one. We've now integrated that one in EMR Studio as well. Pretty cool news. More regions, that's all fun and games. OpenSearch has a few interesting ones as well. So that's our typical tool for operational analysis. So all your log files get in there, you can search it, you can index it, and you can do some analytics on it. So I'm not going to go over the whole neural sparse retrieval. I had the whole thing prepared for that. That takes a little while. If you're interested, if you have an inkling of what that means, we can have a chat afterwards. This is an interesting one because indexing heavy applications will benefit from this new instance type that we have supported. Zero ETL integration, there we go. With S3 and DynamoDB, I think both of them in preview.
DynamoDB is GA.
GA, okay, thank you. What else do we have? Oh yeah, you can now migrate your Elasticsearch indexes, because you know OpenSearch is actually originally based on Elasticsearch. Finally, you can migrate it. Correct. What else do we have? Which is buffering, of course. And then Athena, of course, one of my favorite ones. Accelerate your queries with Express Zone 1, there we go again. This is a good one as well. We have again zero ETL, but now for the CloudTrail Lake. Everyone knows what CloudTrail is? Yeah, so basically that's Big Brother. Eh? So every API calling your account gets, you know everything you do once you log in, they know. So you have a lake, which is coming with some data lake for CloudTrail. Now gets integrated via zero ETL with Athena. You can just query everything. That's that cost-based optimizer that we talked about. Remember the column level statistics that we had in blue? This is showing here how Athena can use it. And then the provisioned capacity was already there. It's all about cost saving. Athena itself is serverless, so you don't have to configure any resources behind it. That said, if you know you're going to use a bit more, or you will need some more capacity, you can kind of reserve the capacity beforehand. What we've added now is a bunch of CloudWatch metrics, and you can also do 1 hour reservations. Cool. What else we have? Streaming, I'll be very fast with that. Graph 3, cool. All program languages, not all of them, a lot of them are supported. I don't know why they said all. There's an interesting new check-in trusted advisor. We have too many partitions in there. MSK, by the way, is managed service for Kafka. I think we all know Kafka. So if you have too many partitions, that would actually hamper your performance. So Trusted Advisor will keep a check on that. You also have capacity alarms, stuff like that. And very good production level tiered storage. Think of it like that. You've got now 2 levels. Hot data can be in the local storage of your cluster. Cold data in a kind of an S3 bucket, so that you pay less, and that you can have a lot more storage capacity. Really, really cool. For Kinesis, only 2 things, but I think they're interesting. Kinesis data streams, so you've got your sources on one side, you put them into a data stream, which can be kind of a storage as well, and then you've got your clients or consumers on the other side. Well, those consumers could be a Lambda function, we know that, well, for those who have used it, but the Lambda function can also be in another account. For two different accounts, we use a resource policy now to grant access to the Lambda in the other account. That's pretty new. I think that'll be interesting. And very interesting as well is that we can now connect the consumer side of our Kinesis data stream to an event-bridge pipe. For those who haven't really played around with that one, basically it connects source with target. That means that there's like 14 new targets that you can check all your events in that Kinesis data stream towards, including other Kinesis data streams. So a lot of applications there. And then lake formation, I think that's the last one. Data filters. So lake formation again, data lake, it's our governance thing there. It's already quite good with fine-grained permissions thanks to the data filters. It's actually added a new level. So with the data filters, you can filter permissions on specific rows, specific columns, or combine them, so specific cells. Now, what if that cell has a very complicated data type? Think a JSON kind of thing, document with a whole bunch of subfields. Well, you can now also go into that subfield. So it's pretty fine-grained, if you ask me. And same thing, our fine-grained access control on the open table formats, which are supported by EMR. We talked a bit about Iceberg. Iceberg is one of them, Delta Lakes and Hoodie are all supported by EMR. You can now use lake formation for fine-grained access as well. And very finally, hybrid access. That's important if you're already using data lakes, let's say pre-lake formation, and you want to kind of introduce lake formation. Instead of having an all or nothing on your permissions, you can slowly integrate it. That was it. Yeah, that's it. So, thank you very much.